Hello, everyone. This is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you to Smart Women Talk, where I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors, thought leaders, and change agents who are on that leading edge. So our topics include things like money, business, health, inspiration, and the metaphysical. I want to also mention that you are welcome to join our free Smart Women community at joinsmartwomen.com. And this is so you will receive our monthly easing that comes on the first Tuesday of the month. So you'll know who our guests we're going to be highlighting. You'll get inspirational articles and tips from them, even free classes. You'll also be able to join the Smart Women Academy, where you can access classes, books, even a 10-day meditation course, all for free because we are donor sponsored and we're a nonprofit. So today, I have got a returning guest. She is also one of our Smart Women Empower Women experts. Her name is Dr. Keesha Ewers, and we're going to be talking about the impact of childhood trauma on your overall health. And our whole theme this month has been on health. So the role of hormones in creating happiness. We all want to be happier. And strategies for healing naturally rather than using prescriptions and getting surgeries and that type of thing. We all want to know how to do this naturally. So we are going to go right into our interview. But before we do, I want to introduce you to, I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Keesha Ewers. She's an integrative medical expert, a doctor of sexology. She's a family practice ARNP. I'm going to ask her what that is. A certified trauma-informed therapist, a certified death doula. She's a board certified functional medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And she's the founder and medical director of the Academy for Integrative Medicine Health Coach Certification Program, which is a fantastic program. Dr. Keesha is the mother of functional sexology, and she's been in this medical field for over 30 years. So she conducted her own study, the HURT study in 2003, Healing Unresolved Trauma. She developed the HURT model for understanding how past childhood trauma impacts our health. And this led her to the creation of the Unbroken and Healing Trauma Through the Chakra System online program for patients to heal their own trauma, and the Mystic Medicine Deep Immersion Healing Retreats that she leads at her home on beautiful San Juan Island in Washington State. I actually lived in Washington, and it is a gorgeous place. So she and her husband, Ajayan, have been regular guests on our show for years, and she is a Smart Women Empower Women partner. So for those who have not joined the community yet, this would be a good time to join. Again, just go to joinsmartwomen.com. and you can learn all about it. So I'm so excited to have you back here, Keesha. How exciting.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me back, Katana.
So Keesha, what brought about your interest in this topic, connecting childhood trauma with health? And I'm sure you must have had some experience in your own childhood that played a role in this.
Well, I guess you could say that I became interested in the topic in my early 30s when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. And, I was running marathons and had a really skydiving, raising 4 children, like very high adrenaline junkie kind of person. And one morning I woke up, and this is actually how my patients describe this too, where all of a sudden I was sick, which is not true. It's not all of a sudden, but it feels like that. So I was just flattened. I couldn't get out of bed. I'd gained 10 pounds of puffiness all over my joints. They were red, they were inflamed. And it was like someone had taken the batteries out of the Energizer Bunny. And so I got in to see a doctor, and she asked me if I had a family history of autoimmune disease. And I said, I think my grandfather had rheumatoid arthritis. And turns out, as I tell this story, I'm 56 right now, and he died when he was 56 in a wheelchair with RA. Oh, wow. So, she just said, well, it's genetic, gave me 2 prescriptions. One was for methotrexate, a cancer fighting drug, and then another non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug that was very strong, and said, take these until you get worse and then come back and we'll change your medication class. And I remember saying, well, hang on, time out. I'm very disciplined. I run, I make my own food, very healthy person, and she said, I'm sorry, you just drew the short straw on the genetic lotto, my dear, and it was like closed book, put on shelf, that's the end. So when I was on my way home, I remember thinking there has to be a different answer than that, because I knew the side effect profile of these drugs. And I also knew my grandfather, who I never got to meet, what his trajectory was. He died young with this disease. So I got home and I started looking on the internet, and I went into PubMed, where we keep our scientific literature, and I started looking for other ways. And I found an article on yoga and RA and thought, okay. And I went to my first yoga class the next day. And the yoga teacher said just enough about this thing called Ayurvedic medicine, which is the sister science of yoga. It's 10,000 years old, from India. And I went home and looked that up, and I was very amazed at what I read, that these people from so long ago had figured out that we're not all the same, that we have different ways we're supposed to feed and water and take care of ourselves. And the autoimmune disease is undigested anger. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not an angry person though. And then going, oh, that may be a problem. Like maybe that's it, that the fact that I don't recognize anger, I probably don't digest it. I just stuff it in my body. And so I started working on yoga and meditation as practices. And one day as I was in this meditation, I was looking at this word autoimmune dancing in front of my third eye space. And, in the beginning days of meditation, you always think you're not supposed to have any thoughts. So I kept trying to put it away, and it kept coming back. And I thought, okay, well, let's look at this word. And what I got was, autoimmune means I'm doing this to myself. I'm basically committing suicide in a societally acceptable manner. And I don't actually really want to die. So when is the first time I wanted to die? So that was a really life-changing question for me to ask. And so I started going back in my meditation, I always call it this little golden breadcrumb trail of Hansel and Gretel in my memory bank, trying to find, is there a place in my life that I did want to die? And I went back, through these different episodes in life, and I got back to this 10-year-old little girl version of myself who was being sexually abused by the vice principal of the elementary school that I was attending. And I remember looking at her, this little Navy brat, who also was traumatized by all the moving. Her dad was out to sea. All these things had kind of converged in this moment in time. And I thought, oh, she wanted to die. She actually wanted off this planet really badly because she couldn't understand what was going on. And the people that she was trying to tell couldn't hear her. I obviously didn't have the right language. I was raised with no television, and it was 1975. And I don't know if I even knew the word sex in those days, or abuse or molestation, So I would tell my mom I didn't want to go to school, that I didn't feel safe. I cry, I had headaches and stomach aches, but I don't, I don't think I was able to convey it clearly. And I did want to die at that point in time. And I was talking to angels and, trying to figure out what else other than this world is there, right? And so I saw her in that meditation, and I went, oh, she did want to die. This might have something to do with this current autoimmune disease. It really made sense to me that it connected. And it turns out that we have a couple of studies now that indicate that that is true, that the early childhood trauma, you could call them adverse childhood experiences, the more of them that we have, the higher the risk for all the chronic illnesses that we have in adulthood in our culture today, including the over 150 autoimmune disease, but also cancers and heart disease and a lot of other things like relationship dysfunction. And one of the most compelling for me that came out of that research was a lack of willingness to engage in consistent self-care activities. Like self-care would be called going to get your nails done rather than actual self-care, where you learn how to, like I keep this little picture next to my computer. You learn how to connect to your little kid self and you actually care for her, right? You don't abandon your body by eating Oreos or, putting sugar in your body. You exercise it, you take care of it, you put it to bed at night, like self-care, real self-care. And you develop self-awareness so that you know that when your perceptions are saying that person's a jerk or I don't feel safe or all of those things that we can think about, that we actually are willing to engage in self-care and self-awareness development, that we can say, oh, so what is it that's about them that I'm triggering to that I'm actually disowning about myself, and really doing that level of work. So within 6 months, my rheumatoid arthritis was gone, because that's what I dove into. Let's heal this. That's amazing. I know it's connected. And, RA was gone within 6 months. No meds.
Did you actually connect with your little girl and see her and talk to her and do some?
And I did some trauma therapy. Absolutely. Like I really, really engaged, and I teach people how to do that too. Yeah. How to, like, when you have attachment trauma, and you have each developmental level, we can have trauma in each of those developmental levels. And then we'll have what you could think of as arrested development of the thing we're supposed to learn right there doesn't happen. You can actually go back and retrain that. You can learn it in adulthood. It's so cool. I did a study called the Healing Unresolved Trauma Study in 2013, where I was able to really track why this happens, that we are more at risk for disease when we have trauma in our childhood. Here's the other thing, Katana, that I don't think a lot of people really understand, is that everybody's had trauma. When I talk about my story, people think about sexual abuse, domestic violence, psychological abuse, abandonment, emotional neglect, like all of those things are what you could think of as capital T trauma. But we all have had trauma in the lowercase t kind. And those are the ones that are feeling like when we're betrayed or rejected, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not fast enough, we're not beautiful enough, like all of those things, right? That you might have messed up a spelling word in the spelling bee in front of the whole class. Or I remember doing therapy on a young man who was in his 40s, who had this social anxiety disorder about getting up in front of the giant tech company that is here in Seattle, one of them that he worked for, and having to present his work, and he would just rather die than do it. And it was from an early middle school event of tripping in the cafeteria in front of all of the cute girls that he loved and, the popular kids, and having his tray just go everywhere and having the entire cafeteria erupt in laughter at him. And then from that point, right, making up a meaning about that, a belief about that, and then an adaptive behavior response. This is what my study tracked. That's what we do. So while tripping in a cafeteria is not really considered a capital T trauma, he never went back in a cafeteria in his life again until we started working together.
You said you said there was 2 steps. They make a...
First, you're going to have a feeling. So here you are, you're splatted on the cafeteria floor. Right. Everyone's laughing. So the feeling's probably going to be shame, embarrassment, right? And then that's going to be felt inside the body, in the system. There's going to be a nervous system response that's fight, flight, freeze, or faint. Now, as children, it's most of the time freeze, because we are not powerful, autonomous beings who can turn and fight our predators usually, right? We either freeze or faint, but we can't usually flee or fight. So you get that autonomic sympathetic nervous system arousal that goes with the feeling, and it happens in your body. So that gets tagged in the body. Then you make up a belief about that. And in this guy's case, it was, I'm such a schlutz. I can't be really trusted in front of people without making a fool of myself. So his belief was, I need to stay away from people And his behavior that he used as an adaptive behavioral strategy was to hide, become invisible. So then when his job duties entailed him getting in front of a large group of people to present his work, he would start having hyperhidrosis, like his shirts would pit out with sweat. He would get sweat, like his brain would go into zebra being chased by a lion, I'm about to get eaten, which then doesn't allow for your adult brain really to work. You're in child space. So it's hard to retrieve all that amazing data that the prefrontal adult brain, right, prefrontal cortex has stored in it, when all you can think about is, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, I'm in danger, right? So it was affecting his job. And he'd gotten Botox injected into his armpits, and he'd been on beta blocker medications. He'd been on anti-anxiety medications. He'd been to lots of different therapists, and someone told him that I could help him. And within one appointment of discovering that's where he created his belief and his meanings and the behavior strategy in order for him to even survive in his child mind was hide. So then if he's brought out of hiding, he's not going to survive. So we healed that. We had to go back to that child, pick him up off of the floor in the cafeteria, right? Help him understand that this happens, right? He's safe. Nobody's going to eat him, but we're wired, we're programmed neurologically to know if we're put on the outside of the firelight circle in early tribal days, the saber-toothed tiger could eat you. So you can't be rejected from the tribe. It's a big trauma. So for him, that was a giant trauma. He was rejected by the middle school tribe, right? Those are the kinds of things that cause disease.
So this was primary research that you did?
Yes.
Now, how did you decide to come up with this study and to, how did you go about that? Because I don't know, I've never heard of a study like this before.
I have a TED Talk, actually, people can watch. It's called, Have You Heard from Your Libido Lately? So it was in my doctoral program. I did this research because I had all these women coming into my practice who were asking for hormones. And I do bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. It's not bad. It's often very, very, very helpful. I take bioidentical progesterone on my wrists every night before bed. This is something that's not a bad thing. However, when they would come and sit down and say, you prescribed this for my sister, mother, daughter, friend, and they look fabulous. I want some of that. I would start asking questions. So why do you think you need to be on hormones? I would get the most remarkable answers back from that question. Well, my libido's gone, and I would say, okay, so when was the last time you had a libido level that you were happy with? I would often get tears to that question. I get like an answer that said never. And I would say, well, hormones, if you were not interested in self-pleasuring or orgasming with another at a very young age, through puberty, then hormones aren't going to make that magically appear now, there's something there. So I started tracking like libido, because in Ayurvedic medicine, 10,000 years ago, they had this word that we don't have in our medical paradigm. It's called ojas. It's in Sanskrit, and it means life force vitality. And I started thinking about libido as kind of close to that, because it's like your desire for life, not just sex, but your passion, your vitality for life, And I started seeing women who would come in and they could track that they don't have that, and they would think hormones would give it to them. And so I started identifying like, oh, so there's acquired low libido that happens when someone comes in my office and says, I love my partner. We've had a great sex life. And then all of a sudden my libido went away as soon as my periods got scattered when I turned 50. That's acquired low libido. But inherent low libido is when you never had a desire for pleasure, right? And we can think about pleasure as all kinds of different things. And so I would say, okay, so the bioidentical hormone replacement, after we test your adrenals and your thyroid and your pancreas and your ovarian function, then absolutely that's an appropriate use of hormones. But for you that's never had a libido, or for you that comes in and says, I would often say, well, okay, so you don't have any libido now, and you said you had it 5 years ago. Do you like your partner? Tears. 5 years ago, he had an affair and I've forgiven him, but I don't want to have sex with him anymore. Well, hormones aren't going to help that either, And so I started realizing there was this other piece, right? That there were actually 5 root causes to low libido as far as classifications. And, there was physical, there was mental, there was emotional, there was spiritual. And then there was what was in the story and how people told it. So I went back to school and I did the study looking at, where does that life force vitality go? And for so many women, it's emotional, mental, spiritual story. It's actually not, it can be a physical thing because your mental part has you not trusting on a productivity hamster wheel and you burn yourself out. So your adrenals are flattened, that there's a motivation under of like, why are you doing that to yourself? And we don't just give you hormones and not get to those root causes. Mm-hmm. So I went back to school to do this research to really track like what's going on with our hormone depletion. And men too, they have it too, where it's the productivity oriented model. That's the masculine. Oh, I'm supposed to have an erotic thought every 1 to 3 seconds, according to the research, and I'm not having it. Like the myths that society perpetrates on us, like you're always supposed to be in the mood. Oh, if my husband really loved me, he would know what I want. If, like all these different myths, right? Those are the story part. So this research was really interesting to conduct. And it turns out like forgiveness is one of the greatest hormone replacers we have.
Now, is that forgiveness of like your person you're in relationship? And is it also forgiveness of yourself? I can understand too.
And the culture and the like all of whatever these root causes are. So the willingness in my hurt model, there's this initial hurt that happens when we're children, and there are several of them. Like we all have a lot of them, not just one. And we have these then adaptive behaviors that our child brain. Remember, the child brain is not fully developed with the prefrontal cortex of the adult until you're 26 years old. Mm-hmm. So you have all kinds of meanings and beliefs you created with adaptive behaviors that were really smart for this level. Yeah. But not for this one, right? And so when you have an upset in your life, you get this opportunity to go, and I call it self-confrontation, where you actually get this opportunity to self-confront and go, gosh, every single time I'm upset around this particular trigger, I'm present. So maybe I'm part of this too. What do I need to know about this? So you're starting to pull out of blaming, shaming, the same, I call it the maladaptive looping. Mm-hmm. It's called automatic negative thoughts. We ruminate on it. We get very judgmental. That pulls our adrenals down. We feel unsafe. Our hormones become imbalanced. Our immune system becomes dysregulated. We start attacking ourselves. So the other side of the model is this willingness to self-confront and create, re-examine these so-called adaptive, which have now become maladaptive behavioral strategies. Like, are Oreos your best course of action right now?
Repeat that. So we start,
our maladaptive behaviors, like food is comfort for me, is one of those maladaptive behavioral responses that children come up with because it's smart when you're a kid. It's very grounding. Like food is very grounding, right? But we get into adulthood and we'll start finding out, oh, like I'm a sugar addict. Oh, drinking a glass of wine every night before bed is actually hurting me. This self-numbing thing that I do with shopping, that's also hurting me. It's creating financial chaos in my life. Like all of these things that we created in childhood to make ourselves feel better, we get this opportunity to recreate and heal that little one and create new beliefs and meanings and behaviors. So you can't just like stop being a sugar addict or an alcoholic or a drug addict. or a financial mess, as you teach, right? You can't
Right.
just stop doing that because your prefrontal cortex says, well, that's a dumb behavior, I'm going to stop now. Because whenever your child brain kicks in and you go into that looping that you created when you're a kid, you're going to be operating from this part of your brain, not this part.
So what is this part back here?
That's your limbic system, your reptilian brain. It's the amygdala that's always looking, it's hypervigilant. Am I okay? Am I safe? Is this going to be, can I trust, right? It's always on alert, looking. That hypervigilant mind can create a hypervigilant hormonal system, adrenals that are always firing cortisol out into the system and breaking down your gut wall and creating all kinds of problems. So that hypervigilance is what we want to calm, right? Where you have the ability to go back to, like, how old do I feel right now? Oh, I'm pre-verbal, I'm crying. So I feel like I'm a baby right now, not getting taken care of, and no one's picking me up or choosing me or noticing me. So in this moment, okay, I'm going to go find a quiet spot and I'm going to pick up that little baby part of me. I'm going to comfort her.
You know what's really strange when you're talking about the baby thing? And I went through some kind of, it was like a 9-month sisterhood thing, that they have here in Detroit. And it was all stuff with American Indian things. It was really wonderful. But there was one point where I realized that I saw myself in a crib all the time, or like a cage when I was little. And then when my mother passed, I read these letters that she was writing to my father, and she said, oh, I have to go get Katana. She is so good. She can spend the whole day upstairs in her bed, and she entertains herself, because she was obsessive compulsive. And it just crushed me. And then I wondered why I never learned to crawl, because I was standing or sitting on my butt in a crib. She said I scooted on the floor, and I've got back problems because of that. Yeah. And there's other things. And I'm getting goosebumps when I talk about this, because I still haven't totally dealt with that. Because I found out right when she died too, that it was true, And then I wonder why I'm so afraid to launch things, because I'm afraid, I was an Army brat like you on top of it. And so I never really felt like I, fit in with a group. I didn't have that whole consistency. And I'm always afraid that I'm going to launch something and then no one will show up. And I think it's because I had to be by myself and no one came for me. Yep. So is that a good example? And then
it's a very good example. And it's an example that I call tracking your hurt.
Okay.
So I have this program called Healing Trauma Through the Chakra System. And I don't use like you're not working on your chakras, it's the chakra system is a map. So in that root chakra, your very first chakra, where, these nerves cross each other around your spinal cord, there's a lot of energy there. That one that's right there down at the bottom, right, has to do with safety and your foundational core. And so if you don't feel safe in the world, so I give you practices for being able to figure out what are the triggers around safety, because we have to heal those first. You can't go into transcendental stuff, and it's called spiritual bypass. Then you're just going to keep triggering these other safety issues. Like, you have to do this in an order. And that piece that you're talking about is a survival issue. I have the same thing, like, oh, you were such a good baby, and it's you learn how to freeze when you're that age, right? Because you're when you reach for somebody, no one's there. So you learn how to just freeze. And so all of that frozen piece that happens inside the nervous system then, right, can create the same kind of response as if you're raging in the world, because it's a fight, flight, freeze, or faint response. And so a lot of people go into shock with freezing, and they don't, and they'll look at somebody that's very like a rageaholic and go, oh, I'm so glad I'm not like that. But you're doing the same thing, but in a different part of the spectrum. Instead of igniting fire, you're freezing ice, and it's doing the same kind of harm inside of your body. So all the good little girls and boys, who are didn't cry, all those things, right? They learned that when they went to reach, there was nobody there. It's an attachment disorder. It's insecure attachment. So that then will create a whole host of problems throughout life unless you go back and self-confront, do that work to heal that. Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing. So, can you tell us, I do work with people on money, and the money personalities, and we've had these conversations before because it's similar work. And I hear there's other people doing the same type of work from different angles. So you also help people when they have money issues, right? Because it shows up in money, it shows up in their weight, it shows up in their ability.
Yeah, I don't specify money. I send them to you, Katana. But the thing that I do is mainly like it's the village, right? Is weight and health and relationships, so. And I think you stopped me when I was talking about one of the adaptive behaviors a child can pick is food. Oftentimes, I'm helping people heal their relationships to their bodies, to food, to themselves. Autoimmune disease is being in a combative relationship with yourself. And so it's learning how to drop into and heal those places so that you're in a collaborative relationship with yourself. You're not engaging in self-harm. Self-harm, I call that drinking coffee every morning and drinking a glass of wine before you go to sleep and not putting yourself to bed until 1 or 2 in the morning, that's self-harm. So people don't realize that, but that's normal, no.
Well, and we're told that it's healthy.
Those people who drink inflammation, coffee, so yeah.
Well, but people who drink coffee live longer, and 1 glass of wine is good. And
so
what is all that about?
I do genetic testing on all my patients because there is one tiny slice of the world where coffee is actually good for you. And so you can find that in your genetics. And there's one tiny slice where wine is. But see, it got put on the front of Time magazine a few times. So now everybody extrapolates it to everyone. Wow. When it's actually just a very small percentage. The rest of us, it causes problems for us. So
you said inflammation.
Lots of inflammation, which is the root of, weight problems, lack of energy, disease, like all of it. So, yeah.
Well, how does the childhood trauma stop abundance? And, abundance is just feeling like things are available to you, that life is available, right?
Right. It's another form of not caring for yourself, right? If you're spending money faster than you're making it, if you don't have a good relationship to the little child part of you and say, I'm here to protect you. I'm here to make sure that you're going to be secure for the rest of your life, then you're self-neglecting, you're abandoning yourself. Yeah.
So it probably has a lot to do with trust too.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, trust is one of the issues that can happen. It depends on what you decided when you were a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So I would like to talk a little bit more about hormones for young people. So many of these young girls, they say they have all these problems around when they have their periods. Mm-hmm. Is that just something that's normal? Get used to it and there's nothing you can do about it? Or is there something that these young people can do?
Yeah, it's not because you're deficient in a birth control pill, that's what gets doled out, which causes problems down the road. So we live in a time period where this is not hyperbole to say this, but we literally have tons of chemicals dumped into our air, water, and soil that are estrogen mimicking and estrogen disrupting. And that's causing problems, and again, genetically, some of us, I'm one of them, have problems removing what are called harmful estrogen metabolites through the liver pathways that are meant to do that. And, so there's a lot that's happening with younger and younger people now where they're unable to filter this chemical toxic soup that they're being raised in. Do you know
Right.
like breast milk is one of the most toxic substances on the planet?
Right now. Yeah, I heard that when a baby's born,
Yeah.
the umbilical cord already has like 200 chemicals in it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
It's
been fed.
terrible.
That's its feeding tube.
I know. I do this thing called conscious conception, where I'm helping people get ready to conceive, at least 6 months ahead of time, so that that's not true. You can actually do something about this where that isn't true. But if you just go along in the world as it is, then that's a truth for us.
And it wasn't
So
like that, 50 years ago, even,
no, no,
especially the way, I mean, everything is getting glyphosate. They're putting
exactly.
it on the wheat before they harvest it.
And
And
that's only one of the chemicals we're talking about. Like there are so many more.
Yeah, and just GMO in general. I thought, well, GMO is bad because they've genetically modified, but why have they done it? They've done it so they can spray it with insecticides, spray it with herbicides, spray it with these chemicals. And all of that is not only going into that food that we end up eating, but it's getting washed into our rivers. And I go, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent here,
Well, I
but
mean, but we
we're
also
ending up
have
drinking it,
we have
and
at least 50 chemicals by the time we walk out the door in the morning as women that we put on our skin and in our hair, and like all these chemicals that we apply, not just the agribusiness. It's not just that. It's endless. And so it's really important to get very conscious about this. Whatever you put on your skin, like I don't have any makeup, on my skin, whatever you put on your skin, you should be able to eat, because it's going in your body when you put it on your skin. So it's a mess. It's just a mess. And of course, toxins are lipophilic. They love fat. And where do we have a lot of fat? Right in our breast tissue. So, yeah.
in our stomachs. So what are some of the things that we can start doing today to maybe turn some of these things around?
Well, if you want to, I can give your audience this little 60 some odd page book that I wrote called Do It Yourself Home Detox, Autoimmune Detox for your home, where you can, it gives you a lot of resources for being able to investigate like the products that you're using to clean, what you're sitting on in terms of, your couch, what you're putting on your body, like all of it, getting really, really aware of all of that. And it has a bunch of recipes for like what I use for moisturizer and, all of those things. You can just whip this stuff up with organic materials and voila. So,
I would love that. That would be
yeah. So we
phenomenal.
have that. Yeah. I
And we
can
can post
definitely,
it to the Facebook too. How would we get that?
I'll have my team send it over to you when we're done and they can give you the link. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to post it. Go to the Smart Women's Empowerment Facebook.
There you go.
And also, for people that really want to connect with you, which website would you like to send them to?
drkeesha.com. That's my only website, drkeesha.com. And in there, there's a whole educational section with tons of free webinars that I've done on educating about all the stuff that we're talking about and more, the emotional trauma healing, also reversing autoimmune disease. I've run 4 reverse autoimmune disease summits. Those are there. Lots of blog material, a lot of free education stuff is there. And then there's also a certification program that's not free. And that's if you want to come and do this for a living. I teach you how to do what I do. And that's to become a certified integrative medicine health coach.
Let's talk about that because a good portion, I think it's 70% of our audience is over 50. And what I do, I help women with that second act. So women 50 plus, and usually it's finding an encore career so they can do something they want, because they've been putting their life on the back burner for all these people and their careers. So, and this is such and it's a health coaching industry, and it's such a huge industry right now. And I know a little bit about you because I've participated in a lot of the different programs that you've done. And I absolutely love the way you arm your people to be able to really do the ongoing treatments and testing and all that with them. So can you talk a little bit about the school, and what I'd love you to share is maybe how a couple of the students have done something with
Yeah.
it. And I'm not sure if you're the one who told me that her daughter ended up doing something for helping women, maybe, but you just said get ready for pregnancy.
Yeah, my daughter does that.
Oh, it is your daughter. Okay, good.
Conscious conception.
Okay, I love that.
So, yeah, it's an amazing program because we have people that have been corporate lawyers, hairstylists, stay-at-home moms, as well as people that do have medical degrees of various kinds, nurses and nurse practitioners and doctors and naturopaths and chiropractors. They're all in there too. And it's because I dial in and I give them a system for being able to utilize Ayurvedic medicine, functional medicine, and emotional trauma healing, and being able to track like what's going on for their client. They learn how to do 4 different functional medicine tests on themselves, and then they'll be able to do it for other people. They learn protocols. We do case study calls every Monday night that are live. People submit their cases even after they've graduated, and I'll mentor them. So I'm always there to help, even after you graduate. It's a 6-month program, but you can take it at your own pace. We have people that have signed up and 3 years later they start, because something happened in life. And so they have access to the material. Even I think I'm the only program I know of that does this. Like you can start whenever you want, you can do it at your own pace. And after you graduate, you still are in the community and have access to all the material. So it's this really vibrant community of people that I call summit junkies. That's who I developed it for. The people that were working on themselves and their families and maybe didn't have a degree already. And people were coming to them anyway, asking questions, and they were helping them. And it's like, well, you can make a career out of this, and I teach you how to do that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So, we have people that are massage therapists and yoga teachers. There's one in particular that's a body worker who it just elevated her practice because as she was a body worker, she could feel that trauma was being held in the body, but she couldn't really help people or measure it. She couldn't measure the hormones, measure the adrenals, right? Oh, yeah, and so what I tell people is if you don't, I always say test, don't guess. If you don't ask the body and get the measurement, the data, then whatever you do over here isn't going to stick emotionally. So you can go to trauma therapy, you can go to therapy for forever, but if your adrenals continually go off and your hormones are in, the toilet, and you've got leaky gut and a bunch of food sensitivities, you're becoming more and more chemically sensitive to the world, and everything's shrinking for you. It doesn't matter how much therapy you do. Like, it's not going to stick. Mm-hmm. So it's working as if the mind and the body are not separate.
Wow. Now, you had an amazing transformation with the RA, the rheumatoid arthritis. The rheumatoid arthritis. Have you seen other people like heal themselves of diseases that
absolutely
need
I have a private Facebook group called the Reverse Autoimmune Disease Institute, private Facebook group, and there are 5,700 people in there, and they all have stories of their transformations. And here's the thing though, I always tell people, like, I wrote a book called Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, and a companion cookbook called the Quick and Easy Autoimmune Paleo Cookbook. And what I wrote in both of those books is I could get rheumatoid arthritis back real quick. Like, it's still in my genetics, right? So if I were to go back and do the perception of the world and myself in it the way that I used to in my late 20s and early 30s, and if I were to go back to eating gluten and being a sugar addict, and triggering in my relationships the way I did when I didn't feel safe, I could have an autoimmune disease fast again.
You mean it would just come back now?
Of course. Everything's in there, right? Oh, yeah. Really? I could definitely get it back. Yeah. So I always tell people, you're not you're not like, this isn't a linear path. It's not one and done and you walk away. It's, oh, this is how I get into a collaborative relationship with my system, my genetics, my gut, my hormones, you know, how to learn how to detox, not just on a physical level, but mental, emotional, and spiritual level too. And inside my story. So it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. So gratifying.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. So, well, you know, it is just, the time has flown by. It's always so fun to connect with you. I want you to tell us about the book again, the 60 pages, and we're going to post it. And what is it?
So I've spoken about two things. One is
Okay.
just a little ebook thing that's 60 some odd pages that I put together. That's a do-it-yourself autoimmune home detox.
Okay.
And then I also wrote a book you can get on Amazon or on my website called Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle. And that's a 275 page book, you know, and it's not free. And then I also have a cookbook. So those are on Amazon and on my website.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm thinking it would be nice if we put the 60-point autoimmune booklets, when you do on your own, we'll talk to you about, maybe we can put that into the academy.
Yes.
As well, you know, that would be a great place to have it. So we'll post it on Facebook, we'll put it in the academy, and then those that are interested in healing themselves and possibly becoming a health coach, this could be a great way for them to come connect with you and get to know you.
It would. I would love to have, you know, I always love people that are passionate about this root cause, getting to the bottom of everything and up-leveling their lives, you know. I have a community full of those amazing people.
You have a huge community.
Yeah.
The more I learn about it, the more exciting it is. So when we did the summit with you, that was like all the summits I've done with you have been some of the most amazing and successful summits we've done. So
good.
Thanks
Good.
for including our community in that. So
we have a very passionate, engaged community that really wants to heal.
So when someone gets on your list, then they'll be invited to your health summits, right?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So we'll do that too. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the work that you do, Katana.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome. So I want to thank everyone for coming today and connecting with us. Our next show is going to be about monetize your message. And our first guest of the month is going to be brand and book strategist and 6-time best-selling author, Ruth Klein, who is also one of our Smart Women, Empower Women partners. So you don't want to miss that show. So anyway, thanks everyone. And until next time, live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.